Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 22. Kalat guna vyatikara parinama sabhavataha karmano janma mahata purusadesthidadabhat. Kalat guna vyatikara parinama sabhavataha karmano janma mahata purusadesthidadabhat. So this verse is also being spoken by Brahma. Brahma is explaining in this chapter how Krishna is the cause of all causes. In order for the creation to take place, the Lord expands in the category of incarnation known as Purusha Avatar. There are different categories of avatars, the first of which is Purusha Avatar. You have Purusha Avatar, Leela Avatar, Manvantara Avatar, Yuga Avatar. So, the various avatars of the Lord can all be ascertained on the basis of knowledge in the scriptures, and there's no need for speculation. The first of this is known as Karandakshay Vishnu, or also as the Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu lies down within the casual ocean that is also known as the Karana ocean. And from his skin holes come out innumerable universes. From your and my skin holes, what comes out? Only perspiration. From your skin holes, can anything else except water come out? No. But from Mahavishnu's skin holes, these universes come out. Innumerable. And then, the second Purusha Avatar expansion takes place, that of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And as Garbhodakshay Vishnu, the Lord is maintaining the universes. It is not that these universes are floating without a law by which they are maintained. And from the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, there emanates a lotus flower with a long stem. And top of the lotus flower, Brahma takes birth. And on that stem, there are 14 planetary systems, lower, middle, and upper. And the topmost is Satyaloka or Brahmaloka. And then the Lord expands as the third Purusha incarnation, which is known as Kshirodakshay Vishnu. And in this, as Kshirodakshay Vishnu, the Lord becomes the Paramatma of all beings. And the Kshirodakshay Vishnu is also addressed as Hari. So, these are briefly the three incarnations that cause the creation and the maintenance of the creation. Because in this verse, Lord Brahma is explaining that the first Purusha incarnation takes place and causes the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva contains all the ingredients of material nature. It includes also the conditioned souls. You have earth, water, fire, and ether. Then you have the knowledge-acquiring senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touch. Then you have the objects of the senses, the working senses like voice, hands, legs, evacuating organs, reproductive organs. All these and the five gross elements, they're all included in the Mahatattva and also the conditioned souls. So Mahatattva, but the Mahatattva only covers a small, tiny portion of the spiritual sky. And then Lord Brahma says, time is manifested. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, time I am the destroyer of everything. So time is one of the manifestations of God. The atheist meets God when? At the time of death. And after time, then the three modes are manifested. So what Lord Brahma is doing is describing the process of creation. Process of creation is a gradual process of development. So Prabhupada in the opening line of the purport says, by the omnipotence of the Supreme Lord, the creation takes place. And the Brahma and the Vedanta Sutra and the Bhagavatam established, Janma dasa yito nayad itaratas chatijana sarat, that I am worshipping that person from whom everything is emanating. Janma. Janma means birth. So I am worshipping, Lord Brahma says, that person from whom everything emanates. So this is the difference between the spiritualist and the materialist. The spiritualist acknowledges that everything is emanating from the Supreme Lord. And since everything is emanating from the Supreme Lord, it is only natural that everything be used in service to the Supreme Lord. This creation of the Lord is not by accident, or it has not evolved automatically as the atheists would like to admit. There is a very scientific plan. That's why the creation is existing without any accident. In the Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says, Maya dakshina prakriti suyate sa characharam. This material creation this material nature is working under my supervision. So the laws of material nature are not easy to contradict. Just like by the power of nature, the sun evaporates the water, stores it in the form of clouds, stores it for 6 to 7 months, and then releases it again in the form of rain. And Krishna has explained in the Bhagavad Gita that rain is the result of yajna. Now scientists were believing they can also produce clouds and then produce rain. So I do not know in your country, but in the Western countries in America, a lot of money was put into producing artificial clouds and then with those artificial clouds producing rain. They call this the process of seeding. So many experiments were carried out, but they failed. I remember in India a few years ago, they had a big drought. So the government had hired this big American company at a very high cost to come and produce artificial rain. But they failed. And they failed everywhere. So you can't contradict the laws of nature. Can't defy these laws because these laws are arranged by the supreme scientist. In today's society, scientists occupy a privileged position. So we are not opposed to that. But what about the supreme scientist? Krishna is also a scientist, but he is the supreme scientist. The craftsmanship that goes into a small leaf cannot be duplicated by all the scientists put together. So the devotees glorify the Supreme Lord because they acknowledge the Lord to be the cause of all causes. Now the gopis in Vrindavan, for example, were not aware of Krishna's greatness. In other words, they were not anxious to see Krishna performing superhuman feats in order to love him or to worship him. That is why Krishna showed his universal form only to Arjuna. Of course, Arjuna also was convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. But Krishna showed the universal form so that in future, when impostors claim to be incarnations of God, they can be verified. The point is that the devotees worship Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they realize that this is the most lovable object, and it is only through this process that the natural desires of the senses can ever be satisfied. Lord Brahma, the Creator, acknowledged that he was given this unique responsibility because of the austerities that he had performed. Therefore, in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, Brahmaji says, Tapaseva param jyotir bhagavatam adhokshajam. That Krishna is adhokshaja. Adhokshaja means very difficult to understand. So to understand God is not so easy. Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita that I'm imparting this knowledge to you because you are my most confidential friend and devotee. Therefore you can understand the transcendental secrets of this great science. Arjuna was not a sannyasi or a mendicant. He was in the Grihastha ashram. But he had one qualification, that is, he was an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. Therefore, he became the recipient of this great science of Bhagavad Gita. So similarly, Krishna, who is Adhokshaja, cannot be understood except through the medium of a devotee of the Lord. If you read Prabhupada's translation of the books, and you read some mundane scholars' presentation of these books, you will find a difference of day and night. The scholar takes on the words and gives his own interpretation, but he doesn't present Krishna as the Supreme Lord. So through the medium of tapasya, and tapasya is performed under the direction of a qualified devotee of the Lord, one can understand Adhokshaja, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Maharaj Rishabdev, in instructing his 100 sons about the goal of life, has very nicely stated as follows. Maharaj Rishabdev was passing by, and there was an assembly of Brahmanas discussing the higher values of life. And Mahārājā Rishbhdev was invited to address the assembly, which also included his 100 sons. So Mahārājā Rishbhdev said, Nāham deha deha bhājam niloke kastam kāmam etavita bhujam ye tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shudayeda smad brahmasokyam vananta. Mahārājā Rishbhdev said that, my dear sons, do not misuse this rare human life, but rather use it for performing austerities for the pleasure of the Lord. So, austerity is the wealth of the transcendentalist. And austerity is one word that everybody else stays away from. People will talk about religion, but they will not talk about austerity. Whereas, in the scriptures we find that austerity is mentioned again and again. Narada Muni, in instructing the Prachetas, has given the following advice. Dayaya sarva bhuteshu santushta yena kenava sarvadindyapa shantya cha tushyati ashu janardana. So Krishna has many names, and one of his name is Janardana. So Narada Muni says, tapaseva param jyoti. No, he says, Dayaya sarva bhuteshu. One should be merciful upon all living entities. One can be merciful upon all living entities only if one is satisfied with what is provided by the will of the Lord and one has control over his senses. We see in the scriptures great emphasis upon controlling the mind and the senses. Narada Pancharatna states, Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparvina nirmalam rishikina sevna bhaktir uchate. Krishna has many names, as we just said. One of them is Rishikesha, which means the owner of the senses. So Krishna is the owner of the senses, not you. That recognition must be deeply established in the heart. So once you recognize that Krishna is the real master and proprietor of the mind and the senses, then the natural inclination should be to utilize the mind and senses in service to the Lord. And the result, Narada Muni states, of offering the mind and senses in service to the Lord is one becomes free of the different designations that one is identifying with. What are these designations? I'm this body, I'm the senses, and the extensions of the body are my parts and parcels. My place of birth has to be worshipped. Members of my community are my friends, and everyone outside are enemies. So due to this identification, the living entity is caught in the well of birth and death. And in this well, there exists a very poisonous serpent. And that poisonous serpent is time. Therefore, the Bhagavatam says, with the rising and setting of the sun, the duration of life of everyone but one who surrenders to the Lord is being reduced. So these senses, when they're not dovetailed in service to the Lord, become a source of anxiety. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are very nice examples given of how animals encounter death in attempting to fulfill their different sense desires. For example, it gives the example of the fish. The fish is very anxious to eat as much as it can get. So the fisherman, what does he do? He goes with food attached to his bait, and the fish sees the bait, runs towards it, and gets trapped. Then the he-elephant, again, is an animal that normally is very difficult to capture. So the hunter digs a big ditch, covers the ditch with grass, then covers the grass with mud, and then tempts the he-elephant to chase the she-elephant for an intimate relationship. And while the he-elephant is chasing the she-elephant, the he-elephant steps on the ditch covered by grass and mud and falls in the ditch and is captured. Then the honeybee. The honeybee is meant to travel from flower to flower and to pick up nectar. And the honeybee, while traveling from flower to flower, comes across a particular lotus flower that has very strong fragrance. And the honeybee gets so entrapped in that fragrance, it's like being in samadhi, trance, that it just sits on that flower. And in the evening, by the laws of nature, when the flower closes, the honeybee gets trapped to death. Then the deer becomes a victim of one particular noise, and that is the noise produced by the horns of the deer. When you rub the horns of the deer together, it produces a particular sound. And the deer has a big weakness for that sound. Otherwise, the deer is very hard to capture. Runs very fast. So the cunning hunter, he produces that sound of the deer's horn rubbing. And the deer stops to run when he hears that sound. So while the deer stops, the hunter shoots him. So this is how the deer gets trapped to death. Then you have the foolish moth. The moth is very attracted to light. In the daytime, the moth is inactive because it wants a powerful bulb or electricity, some strong light to sit on. So it is in misery all day. But in the night, when the lights are switched on, it gets into ecstasy. You see that in India. In India, if you go to Mayapur, you will see all these moths. The moment the lights are put on, they begin to boom, they get into action. And they get higher and higher till they reach the bulb. It tries to go and sit on the bulb. But the moment it goes and sits on the bulb, it gets burned to death. So Bhagavatam says similarly, the foolish materialist is running after fulfilling his lusty desires. And just like the moth gets burned to death, those who are trying to fulfill their lusty desires will similarly get burned to death. Therefore, the Bhagavatam cautions us against becoming a slave of these senses. In the Bhagavatam, there's also the story of two birds who were romantically very, very happy, husband and wife, and they slowly had few children. So one day, the father and mother left the children in the nest and went to bring some food for the children. And as the children were left in the nest, they gradually got out of the nest and started walking around the nest. And there was a hunter passing by. The hunter saw these nice children walking around. So he threw his net and trapped the children. When the father and mother came back, they saw their loved ones right in front of them, but caught in the hunter's net. And the father and mother were unable to do anything. The mother began to lament at seeing her beloved ones right in front of her, but in the trap of death. And lamenting, the mother also fell in the hunter's net. And the father was lamenting how he wasted his valuable time just flattering his wife and worrying about the children and not worrying about self-realization. And how and just lamenting, he also got trapped in the hunter's. So the Bhagavatam this is a story from the Bhagavatam, 11th canto. So in the 11th canto, the story is there to point out how the foolish materialist, if he doesn't use this life intelligently, how in the end there will be nothing but lamentation. There's also the story of a prostitute called Pingala. This prostitute Pingala had dressed herself very attractively, and she was standing on the street waiting all night for a customer. So all night she was waiting for a prostitute. Every man who was coming by, she was thinking, maybe this man's going to become my client. And all night she waited, but she didn't get any client. So she was frustrated, depressed. So when she went home, she was very frustrated and depressed. But as a result of that frustration and depression, there arose within her a feeling of happiness. And then she realized that it was foolishness to try and look for a client to make money and get some pleasure. And she made herself so presentable so that she could just attract some customer. And as a result of that happiness that came within her heart, she gave up all her so-called opulence and took shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And she said that even if I have a husband, how long can the husband protect me? But if I take shelter of Krishna, the way Goddess Lakshmi has taken shelter, then I will never be saddened. So the point is, just like Pingala, as long as she was trying to fulfill her material desires, she was full of anxiety. But the moment she took shelter of the Lord, she became peaceful. So this is the key to spiritual understanding. Once you have your material desires, you will also have unlimited sources of anxiety. And when you abandon these material desires in favor of devotional service, then you'll become peaceful. Just like in the Bhagavatam it is said, you can destroy illusion with spiritual discussion. You can destroy lamentation with spiritual discussion. You can destroy fear with spiritual discussion. So that means with spiritual deliberation, Actually, it says spiritual deliberation. That means that as you hear spiritual discourses, as you read these books, you understand that how this path of sense enjoyment is a path of illusion. And once you but all this illusion, lamentation, fear that constantly accompany us, all this can be overcome only through the medium of spiritual deliberation. Otherwise, lamentation, illusion, fear cannot be overcome. And the Bhagavatam gives a nice example. It says just like a man who is wearing shoes. A man who is wearing shoes, he can walk in any situation, whether they are stones or thorns, it doesn't bother him. Similarly, one who is spiritually enlightened, to him there is no illusion, there is no fear, there is no lamentation, there is no anxiety. So our insurance against Maya is spiritual deliberation. Therefore, Prabhupada insisted that all devotees must come to Bhagavatam class, Bhagavad Gita class. Therefore, Bhagavatam says, Niṣṭhā prayesha badresha nityam bhagavad sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhakti bhavati naistaki. That is, if one regularly hears the Bhagavatam, then loving devotional service will be established and inauspicious active desires will be destroyed. So devotees are interested in executing loving devotional service. Not just devotional service, but loving devotional service. Therefore, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tesam sadata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upyanti te. Those who are in knowledge, they worship me with love. Priti purvakam. Priti, I think priti is also a Russian word, no? Priti means with love. So those who worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So Krishna wants us to serve him with love. But do we have that love at the moment? Niyat. We have no love. All we have is lust everywhere. And if we claim we have love, we are just in another hallucination. So we have to develop that love. That is why there is the process of devotional service. That is why there is the process of sadhana bhakti. What does sadhana bhakti mean? Sadhana bhakti means rules and regulations. Sadhana bhakti gets divided into two categories. Vaidhi and Ragunuga. Vaidhi means rules, regulations. Ragunuga means spontaneous. So if you follow rules and regulations, you'll get to the spontaneous stage. But without rules and regulations, you can't get to spontaneous. That is why we have these rules and regulations. So we should follow these rules and regulations and then you'll get to the spontaneous stage. But the spontaneous stage is far away. We should not artificially claim that we have reached a spontaneous stage when we haven't. There are many people in Kali Yuga who make a show of being very advanced spiritually. They're not advanced. So, by taking shelter the process of Vaidhi Bhakti, strictly, without compromising, you get to the stage where you develop Ragunuga Bhakti. In the very beginning, one has a little faith. Then he begins to associate with devotees. Sadhu Sangha. Faith is called Shraddha. Then there is Sadhu Sangha. Then you do Sadhu Sangha, one executes process of Sadhana Bhakti. This is known as stage of Bhajana Kriya. As you follow this stage, then the anarthas within the heart begin to melt. And as the anarthas in the heart begin to melt, Niṣṭhā, determination to serve Lord, is established. At the moment our Niṣṭhā is very weak. The moment we have a little agitation, we get distracted. The moment we are insulted, we are ready to quit. The moment we find something difficult, we find some difficulties on the devotional path, we feel discouraged. But we have to be determined, fixed. Niṣṭhā has to become strong. And the Niṣṭhā will become strong by the execution of Bhajana Kriya. As we execute our Bhajana Kriya properly, the anarthas will begin to melt and slowly the determination will become strong. So the whole process of sadhana bhakti is to bring us to the point where your Niṣṭhā is strong. And if we sincerely follow the process, then that stage will come. So to summarize the verse, Lord Brahma is continuing to describe this one single point, how Krishna is the cause of all causes. But Brahma is making this one point through different angles in every verse. In the verse we discussed today, Brahma describes the Purusha incarnation. And we explained how the Purusha incarnation is divided into three parts. Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu and Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, and how the Lord is the cause of all causes. And our remembrance that Krishna is the cause of all causes and Krishna is the proprietor of the senses will be fully realized as we execute devotional service enthusiastically. As we execute devotional service, this understanding will get more and more consolidated in the heart. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I just want to speak for a few minutes about Sankirtan also, because today is my last Bhagavatam class. I'm going to be leaving this afternoon. And without Sankirtan, nothing is completed. Just like the soul maintains the body, Sankirtan maintains this Krishna conscious movement. Without dusha, what do they say? The living entity is dead, isn't it? Huh? So similarly, without preaching, the living entity is dead. So you see so many big churches in your city of Moscow and all over your country and all over the world. You see big temples in India. But is there any preaching going on in these places? No preaching. So without preaching, Prabhupada said, we are dead. Our devotee is dead. Therefore, even when the Vedas were spoken thousands of years ago, this emphasis of preaching was there. The Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago, only in Kurukshetra. But actually it was spoken even earlier to the sun god Vivaswan. And even in the Bhagavad Gita, we find the emphasis is on preaching. Because in the 18th chapter, when Krishna is summarizing the Bhagavad Gita, he says, the dearmost devotee is one who preaches my glories. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which was compiled by Shukadeva Goswami, again we see that there are many verses in the Bhagavatam. I can list to you all the verses in the Bhagavatam that explain the importance of preaching, showing mercy. Actually, one verse I quoted in the class today from Narada Muni, speaking to the Prachetas, Dayaya Sarva Padeshu Santushtayena Kenava. A devotee must show mercy to all entities. So, the true manifestation of mercy is giving people knowledge by which they can stop the process of birth and death. We're not interested in giving false mercy. The materialist concept of mercy is give them some more dosage of sense enjoyment. Therefore, you have in America, if a drunkard is going and begging for money to buy beer, Americans very willingly give him. And people open up educational institutions and give knowledge by which they can all forget God. And people open up charitable hospitals so that they can recover from the disease and again resume sense enjoyment. And when a man can't have sense enjoyment, what do they say in material language? Poor man, he's sick. Poor man. So, our definition of poor is different. Our definition of poor man is not one who has less dengue. It's not one who is who doesn't get. It's one who is forgetting God. Like in Sanskrit, there are two words, sanat and anath. Sanat means one who has parents. Anath means one who is an orphan. So from a material angle, the one whose father and mother dead, he is called an anath. And one who has mother and father, he is called sanat. But Bhagavatam says differently. Bhagavatam says one who doesn't accept Krishna as the cause of all causes, he is an orphan, anath. So virtually the whole society is full of anaths. They don't accept God as the cause of all causes. So we have to make them aware that God is the cause of all causes. And what is the principal medium? Book distribution. As we've said many times, Prabhupada has given us many weapons by which we can destroy illusion. He gave us a weapon of book distribution, Harinam, Prasad distribution. Just like yesterday, we did the program at our new cafe in Leningrad. This is the second cafe there in that city. And 300 people are eating Prasad every day. So that's also another weapon. But one weapon which goes a long way is the weapon of book distribution. When you eat prasad, only one man gets the benefit. Because you can't put prasad in the stomach and then take it out and transfer it to another stomach. Mosna? Yeah. But when you distribute a book, not only one person who buys the book will read it, but 10, 15, 20 people can read it. And they can read the book at any time. Prabhupada said these books can explode at any time. It's like a bomb that you plant and you never know when it's going to blow. The other bomb blasts are destructive, but this bomb blast is constructive. So therefore, Prabhupada wanted us to push book distribution. So there's no end to the limit of book distribution. There's no limit to where book distribution can expand. Just like in mundane language, they say sky is the limit. So sky is the limit for book distribution. Till everybody has a book in his house, a devotee cannot be satisfied. Not just one book, but gradually all the books. And as they read these books, they gain more and more knowledge about Krishna. And this book distribution program becomes successful by the endeavors of the devotee. Nothing happens without the effort of the devotee. Krishna could easily have made Arjuna victorious. But did he do that? No. He told Arjuna, you fight. So Krishna wants the devotees to work for him. Otherwise, by Lord Chaitanya's desire, Krishna consciousness could have spread automatically. But he wanted his devotees to endeavor. Therefore, he sent Lord Nityananda from village to village, house to house. Therefore, he sent all his devotees to go and preach. Therefore, he traveled and preached and left an instruction for all of us. Jare dakho taheka Krishna updesh. Wherever you see, tell him about Krishna. So if we tell a person, if we stop every man on the street and tell him one word about Krishna, there's a good chance he'll forget after a few minutes. But if we give him a book, then there's a good chance he won't forget. He'll be able to see the pictures of Krishna, Prabhupada. Plus, since he spent the money to buy the book, he'll actually read it. He's not going to spend 200 rubles and then not read the book. If you give the books away free, some people read it, some don't read it. But when they buy a book, they always read it. So, as we distribute these books, we save the face of society. So we want to request all the devotees to please understand that this book distribution activity is our most important activity. Prabhupada said, ISKCON is my body and book distribution is the heart. So you may have a good-looking body, but if you don't have a healthy heart, the good-looking body can do nothing. So similarly, you may have big buildings, but if you don't have preaching, then it's a sick body. So we should all help expand this book distribution so that more and more people can read these books. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.